Welcome to Community Roundtable. I'm Nick Burns from the Salt Lake Community College Division of Communication and Performing Arts, and I'm your host as we explore topics of special interest and special concern to the residents of the cities and to the unincorporated areas throughout all of Salt Lake County. And these are topics that we feel are equally important to the general public throughout all the state of Utah. And today, on Community Roundtable, we welcome Utah State Senator Steve Urquhart. He's been visiting colleges and universities throughout the state, and this includes Salt Lake Community College. And all along, he's become, I want to say, rather a champion of higher education within Utah. So with Senator Urquhart, we'll talk about improving Utah higher education, and we'll ask him about K-12 public education also. Plus, we'll ask Senator Urquhart about his anti-discrimination bill, which he's bringing back to the 2015 legislative session. Today on Community Roundtable, what's happening on Capitol Hill and what's new with Senator Urquhart. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
My pleasure. So let's start with higher education. I know you actually go out there and tour the campuses. I know you've been here, you've met with students, you've met with President Hufftalin. Tell me your thoughts about how you think this institution is different than the four-year schools you visited.
Yeah, I can easily do that.
Okay.
The whole summer I've been working on performance funding. Last year, Salt Lake Community College, UVU, Dixie had a great year in terms of base funding, catching up on a per Utah equivalent to their peers. And so I figured with that equal base being established, I want to move us in the direction where we're paid for actual performance rather than just growth. And so I worked hard on it, talked with everyone, thought I had it all figured out, and went to Salt Lake Community College and realized that unfortunately I'm not even close to having it figured out because of the unique issues at Salt Lake Community College. I mean,
like what?
So many of your students working while they're going to school, and not only working a little, working a lot. A lot of first-generation college students. So you couple those two things right there, and it's a more difficult prospect, and it's amazing the job that Salt Lake Community College is doing with its demographic.
Well, thanks. So instead of performance, then what? Mission funding? Because, I mean, it seems our mission here is a little different than like the U or UVU or Dixie.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to move us toward performance funding.
Okay.
I mean, if the only thing we're funding is growth, then that might be the only thing we get. And we need to really start rewarding excellence. There has to be a financial incentive for completing students. And so I still want to move in that direction, but I need to figure out what do we measure and how fast do we go on this. And so one thing that I'm thinking we can do right away is we can have some performance metrics tied to math.
Okay. And you just blogged about math, and I was really glad to see that you were making a connection between high school outcomes and college readiness, specifically with math.
Yeah. Math is the burial ground of higher ed aspirations.
That's sad.
That's where dreams of a college diploma go to die. We've known that for quite a while.
I mean, you came across this, 10, 15 years ago when you started in the Senate, right?
Yeah, I mean, my very first year in the legislature, back when I was in the House in 2001, Kerry Roensberg, who was the president of UVU, UVSC at the time, he told us about his numbers, that 70% of his incoming freshmen straight out of high school, they needed remedial math.
Almost 3 out of 4, almost.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. And so we know nationwide data, if a student has to take a single remedial course, then that student only has a 25% likelihood of completing college. So that's a huge challenge for our students if we're graduating from high school not ready for college.
So you're washing people out of college before they even get to the door.
Oh, absolutely.
So what's the fix?
Well, okay, so after learning that from Kerry Roensberg in 2003, I was the House sponsor of legislation requiring the third year of high school math. And so this year I want to run a bill requiring a fourth year of high school math. Because what President Roensberg taught me is he said it's not that our students are stupid. You know, we can take solace in that. We don't have stupid Utah kids. It's just that they haven't taken enough math And then maybe even more detrimental is they haven't thought about math for a year or so by the time they have to take that college math course. Math is a language, and if we turn our brains off to math, then we're really going to lose it rapidly, and that will put us behind.
So it isn't only that every college student needs to become a finance major or study statistics, it's that math skills translate into critical thinking in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to produce students that have skills that the marketplace recognizes, of course. That's a big reason kids go to college that people go to college is to gain marketplace value. But more fundamentally, it's to create people who know how to think, who know how to reason, who know how to analyze the world around them and make rational, good choices in that world.
I mean, you get citizenship and good employees both that way.
Oh, yeah.
Which you'd think would be win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. You know.
So what's the pushback to not having 3 or 4 years of math? I mean, how did we ever get away from that?
Well, I'm finding there are two big areas of pushback. One, I would call the status, that they say, look, this is good enough. If you force the students to take math, then that will leave less room to take other classes. And I hear this a lot from music folks, art folks, and
folks like me, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of a false dichotomy there. That you know, there are a lot of classes that students take, and let's not make math the devil if that is the reason why so many of our students are washing out of college.
It doesn't have to be either or.
Right, I agree. And so that's one camp, is the statist, and then I have the folks who this wouldn't be going far enough. Rather than just requiring a 4th year of math, they're saying, why don't we completely rethink how we do math? And I'm all for that. I've been asking the question a lot recently, why do we teach math? And are we going about it the right way? And I think we're not. But we have to start at some point. You know, if we're going to deny a rational step forward because it's not a giant leap a mile forward, then we're never going to move forward. But so those are the two camps. And so, well, okay, no, and there's a third that I think has great value. They're saying, well, what if you have a kid who just doesn't want to do math, they don't want to go to college? And I hear that if you take a kid who just isn't interested in being at school, isn't interested in taking that math course, that kid's going to struggle. And it's really not fair, I should say. It's not humane to subject them to math unwillingly. And so what I want to allow is, okay, you can opt out of that 4th year of math if you say, here's the direction I'm taking instead. Maybe this could be music and arts, but I'm thinking more vocationally, work toward a certificate that the marketplace will recognize.
Okay.
Don't just waste a senior year. Let's take a direction and start moving that way.
So, I mean, there's a pathway that brings back in Salt Lake Community College, right? Those certificates could be here.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to do a quick break, but when we come back, we'll talk more with Senator Urquhart and want to get more into this notion of higher ed and how to make it better, and also talk about anti-discrimination statewide here in Utah. Keep it tuned. We'll be right back on SLCCTV Community Roundtable. We are back on Community Roundtable talking with State Senator Steve Urquhart, talking about higher education here in the state. You mentioned this notion of math in high school and, you know, that it's the graveyard of college dreams. And I wonder, with all this push towards performance that you mentioned earlier, is there any pushback from high schools? Because if they have to do the math, then their performance will suffer.
Yes. When I ran the 3rd year of math, in 2003, amazingly, and I still don't quite understand it, that's where the pushback came from. It came from secondary ed, it came from UEA, it came from PTA. You know, to me, it must be they don't understand the data. They don't understand that we're dooming so many of our children to failure in college by not adequately preparing them. Now, if there are the statist, I'll admit I'm not tolerant of the position, because what we're doing right now, it is not well enough. It's not even close to well enough. So we need to do something different. So if anyone wants to engage in a conversation of how we go about that, that's great.
Okay.
But just to continue to fail in the same way, I have no interest in doing that.
Well, I was thinking about this ABCDF for schools. So if you push more math, then you've got more dropouts, let's say at the high school level. Then you get more failing schools. So then the high schools look bad, but the status quo, you can push the failure to the colleges. I mean, it's very lose-lose.
Well, exactly. And, you know, I think the personnel that they're working in education, they have greater motivations and aspirations than to just try to pad over failure. I think that we can get a common vision on this if people come to the understanding in secondary ed, that the understanding that higher ed has had for a long time, that we are failing our students. We're dooming them by not preparing them for college math. I think when secondary ed better understands that, because I don't think they understand it, then I think they'll get on board and we'll have a meaningful dialogue of, okay, you know, my idea right now, it's raw, and so it probably could use some work, but let's come to the table and let's work on it.
I mean, we are in this place where it's time to do something different, but your approach, looking at it holistically, seems remarkably fresh.
Well, the math concept after Salt Lake Community College taught me that I wasn't quite there on what I wanted to do on Performance Funding. I said, okay, how about we talk about math? How about we require for? I got an ovation from the administrators, and legislators never get ovations from
education. Not so much anymore.
I met with the faculty senate at UVU later that day, and I got an ovation from them. First time it's ever happened when I've talked about higher ed. So this is something that higher ed, they fully get, that we're walking students off a cliff. If it's time and money, those are the enemies of every college student. Remedial courses, we're just subjecting them to those enemies of time and money. If we can change things so that our students already have college credit before they walk through our doors, if they have Math 1030, 1050, a lot of them, like one of my daughters, she will never again take math, and she will graduate college. And if she had to take math in college while she still has other demanding courses, she might struggle. But that one, you know, check it off. She's done that. She's gained the competence she needs to get a lot of degrees.
So she's got a dad who's figured it out, right? Do it now and don't have to do it later. Work on other stuff.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Before her senior year, she said, "Dad, I've always heard you preach 4 years of math. I'm not doing it." And so I said, "Okay, well, let's make a deal. Take Math 1050 one semester and be done with it forever." And she said, "I can do that." I said, "You can do that." And so we got to tell a bunch of our students, you can do that.
So what about other issues? I mean, there was a piece in the Salt Lake Tribune just here at the end of November about incentivizing completion. And I wondered about what about issues beyond what colleges can do? Like you say, you get a standing ovation because UVU, Salt Lake Community College, we'd rather be teaching 1050, not remedial, and that goes for English and any number of other things. But then again, we have students working for $7 an hour. We have tuition that's ever growing up. It seems like there are other weights on students that are beyond just something you can push onto the college to fix.
Yeah, there are. But in higher ed, we're not going to be able to affect a lot of those life events. But what we can do is we can make a more streamlined, flexible process for our students. I mean, for example, it's inexcusable how we're currently making students wait to take gateway courses, prerequisites, that, okay, sorry you didn't get in this fall, but maybe we can squeeze you in this spring. Again, the enemies of time and money. What we're saying is you can't move forward, but take these other courses, continue to give us money. And so that's inexcusable. And then a lot of our, now this is something Salt Lake Community College does a phenomenal job of, is making space available in courses, then also flexibility. A lot of the institutions could learn from SLCC on this one because people, they do have their jobs, they get married, they might have babies, and maybe their schedule doesn't exactly work at 9 a.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And so there are things like that we can make the system a lot more user-friendly for our students.
Good. Thank you. It's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
So you chair on the Senate side the higher ed subcommittee, right?
Correct.
You're on the K through 12 subcommittee. Are you the go-to guy? Does the rest of the House and the Senate come to you as the guy who knows what's what? Are you the Pied Piper, so to speak?
I've always been very interested in education. I mean, that's my background. You know, I grew up without a lot in Texas and realized that education was the pathway out, and so I get that. So I've always been interested in it and have been active in it, have passed some legislation that I think has been helpful. On higher ed, I have worked extremely hard at it, and my colleagues, they are willing to listen to me and help me out with the things I think are important. Okay,
well, good, because I saw you at the General Educated Persons Conference recently. I heard very good things about the COM-based conference in Colorado that you were at, and then I heard you're going to a conference in New Orleans later on?
Right.
So are you presenting there? Or?
Yeah, I'm actually presenting with Commissioner Dave Buehler.
Okay.
We're talking about how folks in higher ed can more effectively work with their state legislatures. And so what I always say is it's pretty simple. When dealing with the legislator, remember to speak slowly and use small words.
Okay, so for that audience, that's a good pitch, maybe not so good up on the Hill.
Yeah.
All right. We're talking with Senator Steve Urquhart. We're talking about higher education. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about statewide anti-discrimination ordinance, which Senator Urquhart, I think, will be bringing back for about the third year in a row. So keep it tuned. We'll be back with more Community Roundtable. We are back on Community Roundtable talking with Senator Steve Urquhart. Been talking about higher education, but now I want to ask you about your anti-discrimination bill, something that's been both lauded and vilified in various quarters, but I understand you're back, for the third year in a row?
Yep.
So tell me, what's the passion there for you?
You know, this has been one of the best things I've ever worked on in my life. I think it has changed my heart. It has changed my life. I just love it. So Brandy Balkin, who's with Equality Utah, probably 5 or 6 years ago, she came to visit me in St. George and said, look, here's why this issue is important. Here are the lives that are affected. There are economic issues. This is really an important thing for the state to do. And so I said, you know, I agree with you. I don't think my constituents are quite ready for this. And then I got to know more of my constituents, largely through my oldest daughter, who she was in high school, and her senior year, she told me that she was going to be president of the Gay Straight Alliance. And so I said, oh. And I said, okay, well, look, I said, this will give me some political issues. And I said, so if you're doing it just to do it, then please do something else. I said, but if this is important to you, then I care far more about you than anything else in life. I said, so if you want to do this, then I'll be with you. And so she did it, and got to know a bunch of her friends and what the issue meant to them, what they face. And when Brandy was in need of a sponsor 3 years ago, I said, yeah, sign me up. Very happy to do it.
I mean, you mentioned businesses, right? I mean, there are large businesses who can't recruit because talented gay and lesbian people won't move here to take a really good job, which seems kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is, people are people, and everyone should have a fair shot at good employment and good housing. It really surprises. If this can move forward in the process, we'll pass it, because it just shocks people to learn that someone can be fired from a job because that person's gay. They can be evicted from an apartment just because that person is gay. That's not the state that most of us want to live in, and so let's change that.
What do you say to those folks who give you that argument that, oh gosh, this will make a special class of people? It's been a pushback for LBGT issues for ages, including this one.
Yeah, and it's not true, because the way the legislation works, it it ties into our existing civil rights legislation, our non-discrimination legislation that is based on race, ethnicity, age, religion, gender. So to add to this sexual orientation, gender identity, well, that protects all of us. All of us have a sexual orientation. All of us have a gender identity. And, it really shouldn't be the business of an employer. It really shouldn't be the business of someone who is in the market to rent housing.
Do you buy the argument that it's religious freedom to say you can't rent my basement apartment?
No, I think that's crap. We have religious freedom. It's a very important concept, but I don't know religions that say you should. We're all God's children, and someone's religious right should not allow them to break laws. It should not allow them to fire people. It should not allow them to evict people. That's just not acceptable in the United States.
So last year it was Senate Bill 100. Year before, I think it was 262.
Correct.
Last year, Senate Bill 100 was pretty much just, I want to say, tabled, killed, squashed before it ever got out the door, and it was all wrapped up in the gay marriage issue.
Yeah.
So what do you make of that?
Yeah. The day the Shelby decision hit, that was just an extraordinary day, and I realized that the fate of my non-discrimination bill was changed in some way. I didn't know how it would shake out, but Senate leadership decided that no bill would go forward that pertained to the LGBT community.
In any way?
In any way. Which, again, that's such a weird way to look at it, because obviously every bill affects LGBT individuals just like all other individuals, right? So it got bottled up. They didn't want anything to mess with the Shelby decision. And I thoroughly respect leadership in the Senate. They do a great job, and I've been up there quite a while. I respect the process. But to me, that was wrong. I mean, that's the genius of Madison, is we take our most complex issues and we implode. Rather than explode out on the streets, we implode toward our legislative bodies. And because we give voice to those issues, we have the debates in our legislative chambers, we don't have violence erupt out on the streets, less so than other countries. And so on an issue that is so important, to me, it's just wrong to shut the doors to the legislature, to everyone who wants to hear this. And so this year, I think the doors will reopen and we'll have hearings and we'll move forward.
So speaking of doors shut, we know we've only got a couple minutes left. What are your thoughts on the 13 people who stood in protest and got arrested outside the Senate doors?
I have mixed feelings on that, in that I'm glad they were there. I'm really glad they were there. That took great courage. And I completely respect that. I appreciate people actively participating in the process. I was trying to negotiate with them to say, okay, the point is well made. Now that we've made the point, give me some room to maneuver, and maybe we can get a committee hearing, maybe. And so I thought that the actual arrest might have taken it a bit too far, but I'm not going to tamp down that's really not my call to make. We're at a day and age where I get the frustration to some degree, but I don't live it every single day. And so that's what I'm telling my colleagues. Let's give voice to this, because the LGBT community, they're no longer at a place after Shelby where they're going to ask, they're going to demand, and rightly so. And so we better open the doors before they get kicked in. So
you think your bill will get a vote, or at least a discussion?
Better.
Cool. What else should people look for? More funding for higher ed and K through 12?
Yeah.
Beyond just new students?
Yeah, I think that higher ed, setting a good course for reform, that's what the legislature always is interested in funding. Something where we feel we're having innovation, where we'll have great return on the investment. And so when the legislature sees how we're willing to innovate in higher ed, that we want to be measured on our performance, then funding should follow that determination.
I appreciate your optimism. And for you, Governor Urquhart or state senator?
No, state senator. I'm happy.
You like what you're doing?
Yeah, I like it very much.
You seem to fit in well.
Thank you.
I mean, you're not pissing off too many people, so I'd take that as a really good sign.
Well,
thank you for being with us. I appreciate it.
thank you. Great conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Community Roundtable. If you have a comment, maybe you have a question, maybe you have an idea for a future show, please get in touch with us. Contact us by email, roundtable@slcctv.com. And don't forget, you can watch and find all our episodes archived at slcctv.com. I'm Nick Burns. Keep it tuned. SLCCTV, Senator Urquhart, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep it tuned for more on SLCC TV.